Welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right in and confront a dilemma that honestly haunts pretty much every instructional designer and educator out there. You know the feeling, right? We literally pour our hearts into building the perfect course, we finally launch it, and then, well, reality hits. So, is a curriculum ever truly finished? I mean, we all absolutely love the myth of the finalized lesson plan, don't we? That glorious, magical moment where we just dust off our hands and declare it an educational masterpiece. But let's be real. If you've ever stepped foot in an actual classroom, you know exactly how funny that idea is. Your learners change, the context changes, the whole world changes. So, how on earth do we design for that kind of reality? Today, we're exploring a framework built for exactly that constant change. Here's our roadmap. We'll quickly cover the linear limits of older models, explore Wheeler's paradigm shift, break down the 5 interdependent elements, look at the absolute power of feedback, and finish up by comparing the models side by side.
All right, Section 1, the linear limits, Tyler and Taba.
Let's start by establishing a quick baseline of how early educational pioneers actually approached design. Back in 1949, Rolf Tyler introduced this highly logical, deductive, top-down approach. And hey, it was incredibly efficient. Then, fast forward to 1962, and Hilda Taba advocated for an inductive, bottom-up logic. Her approach was much more realistic and teacher-led. But here's the fascinating part. Despite pointing in completely opposite directions, one coming from the top down, the other from the bottom up, they actually had something major in common. And that crucial point is that both of these foundational models share a fatal flaw. They are strictly linear. Basically, they're sequential, one-way streets. You start at the beginning, you march through the steps, and you end with a final product. Check, just to see if the learners actually learned the thing. And then, you just stop. The curriculum is treated as a finalized, one-and-done task. But as we've already established, education doesn't just stop.
Which brings us to Section 2, Wheeler's paradigm shift. Enter the cycle.
So in 1967, D.K. Wheeler comes along and completely shifts the shape of the educational paradigm. He looked at Tyler's linear rationale, realized it needed a massive upgrade, and defined a completely new cyclical approach. Instead of this one-way street with a dead end, curriculum development became a continuous, highly flexible process. As teachers teach, they also learn. I just love that quote. It deeply validates the actual, real-world experience of educators. You don't just teach a group of students and pack your bags for the summer. No way. You learn from what worked. You learn from that one activity that totally bombed. We've all been there. And you adapt those materials for the next group. The curriculum literally has to live and breathe right alongside the instructor. Moving right along to Section 3, the 5 interdependent elements, the what. Okay, so Wheeler's cycle consists of 5 clear steps. First step, you determine your target, your aims, goals, and objectives. Next, you select the learning experiences. Those are the actual hands-on activities your students will engage in. That's followed closely by the selection of content, which is the core subject matter itself. Then, step 4, you organize and integrate those experiences into a cohesive structure, before finally hitting evaluation to assess the effectiveness of everything you just built. But wait, do not let the word finally fool you here, because this is the absolute magic of Wheeler's model. Step 5 feeds directly back into step 1. Unlike those older linear models we talked about, this system absolutely does not end at evaluation. Once you assess how things went, you take all that rich data, you loop it right back to your aims and goals, and the whole cycle starts all over again for the very next iteration. Now for Section 4, the power of feedback. The what for? We know the what, but why make it a circle? Well, the primary purpose of Wheeler's model is to transform curriculum design into a dynamic, responsive system. In this model, that big test at the end of the unit isn't just to grade the student, it's actually there to grade the curriculum itself. Evaluation acts as a vital source of feedback and improvement, not just a final check. By making the whole process cyclical, Wheeler effectively addressed all the rigid deficiencies of Tyler's finalized linear task. Actually, I want to slow down for a quick second on this concept of situational analysis, because it's absolutely crucial. A cyclical model literally forces you to continuously look at the specific learners sitting right in front of you. You aren't just teaching some generic syllabus, you are ensuring relevance to a particular environment. I mean, what worked perfectly for a morning class might totally flop in an evening class. And what worked in 2019? Yeah, that definitely required some major adjusting in 2020. Situational analysis ensures your curriculum actually fits your classroom context, right here, right now.
And because of that constant analysis, we hit upon a key rule of the model. A change in one area naturally requires adjustments in others. Wheeler's 5 elements are strictly interdependent. It's like a giant puzzle. If you realize your students need different content, let's say you update step 3, you can't just leave the rest of the course alone. Changing the content naturally demands that you adjust the learning experiences in step 2 and probably the evaluation in step 5. They are entirely linked. You turn one dial and the others have to shift to keep the whole machine running smoothly.
Finally, Section 5, comparing the models, the ultimate takeaway.
Let's pull everything together into one high-level wrap-up. Looking at the key features, we can easily synthesize how curriculum design has evolved. Structurally, Tyler and Taba were linear and sequential, but Wheeler brought us the continuous, process-oriented cycle. For the earlier models, evaluation was really just a final stage to check attainment, but for Wheeler, it became an essential feedback loop for improvement. Ultimately, Tyler gives you logic and efficiency, Taba gives you realism, but Wheeler gives you flexibility and situational relevance. He gives you a curriculum that actually adapts and survives. Which brings us to the end of this explainer and right back to you. The absolute beauty of Wheeler's model is that it completely forgives imperfection. Your course doesn't have to be flawlessly finished on day 1 because day 1 is literally just the start of the cycle. So my challenge to you is this. Look at your own materials, look closely at the learners in front of you, and ask yourself, how will you use today's feedback to reshape your next cycle? Thanks for joining me on this explainer and keep learning.